Good morning. This is a nice spring morning. I believe it's March 7th or something like that, 2025. Today we are going to be working on my 2002 Nissan Xterra. This is a 2002 Nissan Xterra, two-wheel drive, and it's got the KA24DE four-cylinder in it. Today we will be replacing the power steering pump. Goes right there. Make a long story short, I had the engine rebuilt in this vehicle whenever I got it back, just like normal. Whenever you have major operations done on your car, there's going to be minor defects that pop up constantly. It turns out that I believe that they tightened up the power steering just a little belt just a little bit too tight, and it wore out the bearing very fast, like in 2 weeks. And I doubt very seriously that this power steering pump has ever been replaced. It's a 22-year-old car, and it just needed to be replaced anyway. But now I'm getting a whining noise, and it's killing me, and I can't stand any whining noise. So today we're going to be replacing it. This is the pump that I got off the internet. I'm cheap. That's the best I can do right now. After looking at it, they look pretty compatible. They look the same. There's that one. There's that one. This, it appears to be this, and that appears to be that. The bolt holes look like they match up over here, and I think that's where a sensor probe goes. First thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen up this pulley. The bolts are 14 millimeter. You have a bolt right here, 14 millimeter. Bolt right here, 14 millimeter. First thing you do is you loosen up this bolt, and then you loosen up the tension, then you take out the belt. The belt is brand new, so I'm not going to replace it. FYI, I skipped the first step. Remove your air cleaner hose. That way you can have access to all this other nonsense. That's the reservoir. Those are the hoses that go there. I guess this is the inlet. This is the outlet. Put a little catch pan underneath your truck, underneath your vehicle. That way, in case you spill some fluid, it'll catch it, won't get on your concrete. I guess the first thing we're going to do on these hoses is just go ahead and disconnect the hoses and try to keep as much fluid as possible from draining out. That takes a fill up, so use it to loosen it. I also cut the top off of a water bottle, be able to put the hose in just in case some decides to come out that hose more than I expected. Alright, I got the hose off. It is dripping a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take this little sensor off right here. You do that by pushing in this little tab right here and pulling it off. This fitting slash nut, bolt, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the more tricky one. As you can tell, I put a little mark on it pointing in the direction of where this little notch is. This is a 24 millimeter. You have to get these exactly correct, because if I'm not mistaken, inside that fitting there is a hole that goes in here and goes down here like this. And if you don't have that bolt correctly aligned, that hole does not allow the fluid to go through here, and you'll burn up your power steering pump and or your unit down there where your steering is. And I was correct. There's the hole. Like I said, that hole has to be lined up perfectly or it's not going to work. Now, one of the most vital parts of this entire operation that I did not get in the kit that I got is that right there. That right there is a copper seal washer. Please do not lose that. If you did not get one in your kit, like I did not get one, you're going to have to reuse that, and that is very vital. You lose that, you're in a lot of trouble, because you got to try and find one. And for these old vehicles, it's hard to find them. Remove it gently and put it somewhere that you will not lose it. FYI, there's one on the bottom also, underneath this thing right here. One goes on top, one goes on bottom. Goes right there. Don't lose these. I'm going to remove this sensor, whatever the hell it is, wire off there. This thing stayed on the bracket, which is right there. So you have to poke something in that hole right there to get it up against that little ridge right there, and then slide that out and get it out of your way. You look inside the pulley, you'll see that there's 3 bolt holes. 1, 2, 3. Thank God the pulley has holes in it. That way you could access these bolts whenever you're removing it. I did a Mazda a couple of years ago. It didn't have no holes in it, and you had to take the pulley off to access the bolt holes. So what you're going to do is you're going to come down here. You're going to get your trusty itty bitty 12 millimeter socket wrench, and you're going to take those bolts off. There is a bracket bolt right there that you need to remove also. Is attached to the bracket that's attached to the back of the pump. I've already got the other bolts out. You got to get this bracket bolt off. That's a 14 millimeter. Take that bracket bolt off and everything should slide out that way. If you look at the back of the pump, you'll see that there's two holes, one hole here and one hole here. That's where the two bracket bolts go on that attach the bracket to the back of the pump, and this thing over here goes over there. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the old pump. There's that little sensor we've got to take off. There's the bracket, and there are the two bolts on the back of the bracket that we got to take off to get the bracket out of there. There is a little residual coming out, so make sure you have a little catch band to catch it. By the way, it looks like there's three bolts. 1, 2, 3. It's holding on that bracket. Somehow we'll figure that out. Again, all three nuts, bolts, whatever you want to call them, screws, they are 12 millimeter. Use 12 millimeter, take it out. As you can see, there's three different lengths, or two different lengths on the three bolts. The long bolt goes right there, then you got the two short bolts right there. All right, we got the bracket on there. There's the old bracket. This little cap here comes off, and this sensor probe right here goes on there just like that. Cap popped right off, and it just slid right on. Put the 14 millimeter bracket bolt on there. I didn't tighten it all the way. Give me a little wiggle room. Wiggle, because I want to make sure I get all those other bolts lined up. Rule of thumb, get all your bolts in there first before you start snugging them in. That way you don't tighten it to the point to where you can't get something else in there that may need a little hair of an adjustment to be able to get the bolt in there. Hopefully you can see I've got my 12 millimeter side bolts in there. There's you can only see two, but the third one down there below is in there also. Now I'm going to tighten them all up. All right, everything's tightened up. Bracket bolts tightened up. Now we remove this, and it's not that hard. Use a Phillips, whatever. Get that out of the way. If you do so, remember, this is the most crucial point. You must put your copper washer on the bottom and your copper washer on the top, and you have to make sure that your alignment bolt right there, that bolt right, that fitting, whatever you want to call that, has that hole pointed in the correct direction whenever you finish tightening it up. There's the hole, and remember, there's a copper washer that's got to go on there too. It's a sealant washer. All right, I've tightened it to where it's hand tight, and as you can see, the line is not pointing where it's supposed to be pointing, so I've got to tighten it till it points that direction, but don't over tighten it. Okay, now that I've tightened it, the line is pointing in the direction of the little thing right here, so it should be close enough and good enough to make sure the fluid, I don't know where that fluid came from. I guess it came from the hose right here. I'll clean that up. Reattach your sensor. Just push it down there and it clicks right on there. Then you get this thing right here and you push it in there and it click right in there, like so. Remove the little stopper here off of the new water pump, power steering pump, and then put your old hose back on there. Once you get the line on, go ahead and fill it up with power steering fluid. This is what I use, pressed on power steering fluid for Asian. All right, the belt's on. Now here's the key. You've got to have a little bit of play in your belt. You've got to be able to push on it a little bit and have it play. Whenever I got this belt back, this damn thing was solid. You couldn't move it at all, and I think that's what put the extra pressure on that and probably warped out the bearings in the original one, the old one. Also, this engine is a 165 horsepower 4-cylinder. You don't want to put that much, serious pressure on your belts, because then it restricts your horsepower and it causes the engine to run harder. That's one of the things I noticed whenever I got this car back. It seemed like I lost horsepower and my gas mileage was horrible, but whenever I loosened up the belt and I figured out what the problem was, all of a sudden I got my horsepower back and I also got my mileage back, which is unbelievable. Startup is complete. There's no squeaking noise. Everything seems to be running normally. I turned the steering wheel. I don't hear any noise, don't hear any squeaking. Sounds good. I had 337,000 miles on this 4-cylinder, and that is why I decided to rebuild it. I'd had to rebuild the top half of the motor due to a timing chain issue. Remember, change your timing chain after 100,000 miles. And so I had the whole motor rebuilt for a second time to be able to do the timing chain issue and some other things. The vehicle runs good. They just made a mistake in tightening up too tight the belt, and somehow it restricted my horsepower. It made my gas mileage horrible, and it burned out the bearing. Other than that, thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something. I know that it's hard to be able to find something on these 4-cylinders because most of these Xterras came with 6 cylinders. You can also look it up on Frontier, but it's still not the same. Y'all take care. My name is Mike Tony, and I hope you enjoyed this video.